So anyway, so that's my commentary today. But you are going to talk a little bit about domestic policy today.
Yes, I am. Okay. So this week, the zombie Joe Biden campaign trotted out old Uncle Joe for a conversation with healthcare activist Ady Barkan. And, you know, this is something that I watched this video this week, and it made me think about a million things. Because the basic dynamic was that Biden and Barkan exchanged a series of pleasantries over the terrible tragedies that have befallen each man. You know, Biden famously lost his wife and daughter in a car crash in 1972, and then his son Beau in 2015 to a brain tumor. And Ady Barkan was diagnosed with ALS in 2016 and now can only speak through a computer. And, like, this is genuinely tragic stuff that have happened to these guys. I mean, there's no way to get around that. I mean, I don't want to downplay that. I don't want to be crass and downplaying the genuine tragedy that had happened to these two men. But then they got to the nitty gritty, and Barkan asked Biden a series of pointed questions about healthcare policy, to which Biden basically responded, "I hear ya, but nah." Let's take a look.
It's no secret that I support Medicare for all.
I don't.
See how easy that was? The flat no. It's just like, no. You know, and then Ady tries a different way. You know, maybe if he frames the question a different way, maybe this time Biden will agree.
Healthcare guaranteed is a human right, but taking away the right to have a private plan if you want a private plan, I disagree with. There's three things that I propose that we can do, and we can do it quickly. I support a public option as well. We can get a public option passed, and we can get it passed quickly. Number one.
So yeah, that's basically it. They had the conversation. Biden didn't budge on a single thing, and they both went on their merry ways. Literally nothing was achieved by this. But of course, this didn't stop liberals from gushing over this exchange with things like, "More of this, please." Even friend of the show, Hillary Clinton, got involved, tweeting out, quote, "Healthcare is a right, not a privilege. This important conversation between Ady Barkan and Joe Biden gives me more confidence than ever we'll realize that truth in our policy soon." And liberals just love this kind of thing. You know, as Adolph Reed says, they love to, quote, "bear witness to suffering and not actually do anything about it." They love that Joe Biden can sit down with someone like Ady Barkan and be like, "Ah, I hear your pain, man. I feel your pain." Talk to him politely and then just move on with his life and never do anything about the actual issue at hand. They don't actually believe in politics anymore. I mean, remember this classic Hillary Clinton line on healthcare.
People who have health emergencies can't wait for us to have some theoretical debate about some better idea that will never, ever come to pass.
And yeah, so this all speaks to a larger issue about power and leverage. I mean, there is this school of thought that was pretty prominent on the liberal left, even today, that says that if you play nice with Biden or Hillary, that these, like, you know, big, powerful Democrats, you will at least be able to be in the room to influence decision makers. I mean, this was the logic that Elizabeth Warren had when she refused to endorse Bernie in 2016 and in 2020. She thought, you know, if I endorse Bernie, I'll be frozen out of a Hillary administration and I won't be able to exert influence. And that's just flawed. I mean, the extent that she can exert influence is if they fear her, not if they like her, if that makes sense. I mean, this was, you know, sadly, arguably the logic that Bernie had when he suspended his campaign, you know, that if he played nice with Joe, at least he'll be able to talk to him and influence him. And like the big concession he got was that he and his people were going to be included in these task forces to devise policy for the Democratic Party. And they did the task forces, and the results are in, and they're not great. You know, this Bloomberg headline pretty much sums it up. It says, quote, "Democrats' joint policy proposals largely eschews Sanders' agenda." It was basically a bigger way of what happened with Joe Biden and Ady Barkan. I hear you, but no, you know? And listen, I'm the last person on the planet to hate on Bernie. I love that man with all my heart. I really do. But we have to start realizing that we're not going to get anything meaningful out of this decrepit Democratic Party by playing nice with them. And it's just not going to cut it. They have to fear us. And right now, they just don't. And I want to be sympathetic because maybe Bernie calculated that we really just don't have the strength right now to make them fear us. I mean, we still only have 10% union density in this country. And until that changes, they will not fear us. But to quote Marco Rubio, let's dispel with this notion that playing nice or being in the room is going to get us anything. It isn't. So Anna, what do you think?
Yeah, I love this commentary. And I totally agree with you. I'm glad that you brought up Bernie because if we're going to be critical of Warren's theory of change, which we certainly have been, we also need to take inventory of Bernie, honestly, both during the primary election and after with this whole task force. Look, we have to be in a world where we're not discussing what our next move is as if we have power in this country. The working class, the left, we don't have power. We don't. And so we decided that like we hit a double and we haven't hit a double. Like we're still on home base. We haven't hit the ball.
Yeah. Look at, wow, I'm shocked. Yeah, you hit the ball. You know what you did, Anna, with that sports metaphor? You knocked it out of the park.
I did. Actually, I don't know. But if you say that I did, awesome. But no, but just going back to the point, I just think that, look, when it comes to Joe Biden, right? Joe Biden has made a political calculation, and it's actually a pretty smart political calculation. He is going to support the policy proposals of individuals who have power and who have contributed to helping him win if he does win. So as much as I love the viciousness of the ads coming from the Lincoln Project, let's not forget who the Lincoln Project consists of. These are hawkish Republicans. They're not even liberal Democrats. These are hawkish Republicans who put us into all of these never-ending wars in the Middle East. They certainly want to continue on with those policies. They don't want any input from progressives. And they have the power and the ability to aid Biden materially with his election. And so we need to like really take stock of what's happening in this country, what the reality is, and pivot to a place where we're actually organizing and encouraging widespread strikes throughout this country. Really, that's the only way that we can accomplish anything when it comes to any type of change economically in the U.S. We can't wait for some Democrat who claims or some so-called progressive who claims that they can influence Biden. They can't. We know they can't. Biden's given a middle finger to every single one of the progressives who have tried to influence him.
Yeah, and Alex Perrine tweeted out this week something that is 1,000% true, is that there's two very real countervailing forces within the Democratic Party right now. One is that the neocon takeover of the leadership of the Democratic Party that you just described, especially through these things like the Lincoln Project, is a very real thing. And they are absolutely listening to them, and they will absolutely have power within a Joe Biden administration. The other countervailing force is that the average son or daughter of like a typical progressive in a big city in America is like 10,000 times more radical than their parents are, right? And those two forces are existing within the Democratic Party at the exact same time. It's just like a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for like an absolute rupture at some point. And these task forces is like it's a perfect example of what we're talking about, right? I mean, things as easy and low-hanging fruit as marijuana legalization, they weren't able to get that. Like, they can't even get to marijuana legalization. There is zero political penalty that you pay from the voters for advocating for marijuana legalization. I mean, that has passed in state after state. Even red states have passed, softening marijuana laws. Like, that is just like the easiest thing that could genuinely probably excite a segment of the Democratic Party base. They couldn't even get to that. I mean, let alone phasing out all fossil fuel production, like all oil and gas production in the United States. Like, they don't even do that. Like, they did this thing where they're going to get the electrical grid to be carbon neutral by 2035, but still maintaining oil and gas production for other things. And it's like, what? Like, that's nothing. Like, to the scale of the crisis, that is nothing. And this idea that we're just going to keep on kind of nudging them, and that they're going to be like receptive to just be like, well, okay, you're convincing me, like, that's just not how it's going to work. Like, as you say, like, if there are widespread strikes, if we somehow manage to rebuild the labor movement in this country, which is very much on the defensive, very much in retreat, very much cowering and in fear. It's just, that's the only way that we're gonna build actual power institutions that can challenge the big power, which is what they have every day. They control the media, they control the financial sector, they control everything, literally everything. We have nothing. Like, look at this. We're seeing like the most widespread popular uprising in America, maybe in 50 years. And we can't even get marijuana legislation on the sort of nominally left of center party in the United States. I mean, that's the scale of which the powerlessness is. So.
Absolutely. And, you know, one question that I have, and I'm hoping that we can answer it in our interview with Nomi Prince today, is, you know, I do think that the working class, working Americans have unrealized power. If they organize and you know, do these mass strikes, it will bring these corporations, these companies who rely on them, to their knees. But when you have the Fed pumping, you know, digitized money into all of these failing corporations and artificially inflating the value of their shares, how does that come into play, right? And so does that further, you know, lessen the power of working Americans? I would argue yes, but could there be a strategy to overcome that? And so I leave you with that question for our break. And when we come back, we'll have Nomi Prince joining us to discuss what the state of our economy, what the Federal Reserve has been doing, what the future is when it comes to possible stimulus during the pandemic. All incredibly important topics to touch on and address. Maybe we can also talk about Bernie Sanders and whether he's had any influence on Biden as well. So stick around. We'll be right back.